By the time we had arrived at the crash site, little was left of the capsule, save for the radiation. All of us were ordered to wear protective suits as we appraised the crater. I had never seen this sort of destruction on the ocean floor before. It was as though the pod had caused a rupture in the environment itself, killing all life around it, and leaving nothing but a black hole. Everything about the site told me that this was an omen of dark times. Circumstances didn't allow me to wonder what had happened here, as I knew that several other international agencies were already searching for the remaining cargo. This was a momentous discovery, regardless of how tragic it was that the crash had caused so much damage, despite my misgivings and fears. Pushing the rover deeper, I maneuvered the arms on either side to unlatch the cargo hold of the pod, giving clear access to my deep-sea camera.
Alright, get him to the surface ASAP. We've got the helicopters ready.
A voice said over my comm. That was my supervisor, Paul Baker, reminding me again this was no time for sentimentality. Work still needed to be done. Using the rover's claw-like arms, I maneuvered my own undersea drone to grab a hold of one crate and pulled it out, a rush of air and bubbles releasing pressure. It still felt unreal to recognize that what I was holding did not come from our Mother Earth. Pushing the engines into reverse, I pulled away from the murky depths to reach our transport above. It was time to make history. For history to decide what our role would be. 3 hours and 3,000 miles later, we were back at the hive. To describe it would be nearly impossible to the uneducated person, but it is both a technological masterpiece and a thing of beauty all at once. Its official name is the Mars Terrestrial Habitation Biome No. 4, but my good friend and occasional romantic partner, Dr. Anna White, coined the term hive last spring, and the name has stuck ever since. She was there waiting for me when we returned with the cargo, fully suited up and ready to take it into the facility. Security was on high alert. No one knew for sure what had caused the capsule to break, and we still hadn't heard from the Diakali-2, the Mars side of our project, since the incident began. I knew our supervisors didn't want a repeat of what had happened on the moon less than a year ago, so every precaution was being taken. I shudder to think of those nightmarish accounts again. Anna and 3 security teams arrived to check the cargo as I unsuited and prepared for depressurization. The top half of the hive was designed for habitation that we humans are accustomed to. This is where I would need to spend the next 6 hours to rest from my deep-sea excursion. But it would be difficult, especially because I knew Anna would likely not wait for me to begin the next round of soil samples and atmospheric tests within the biome. "Promise you won't make any discoveries without me?" I teased. She gave me a childish grin and looked like she had just won the lottery. I didn't hold her to any vows. I didn't know that before long, that smile would be wiped away. Instead, I got to my quarters and made a call to the lunar base again, hoping for some answers. If anyone could explain what had happened to the Mars team, it would be them. Thankfully, I got a response.
Officer Barzai, I hope that everything is going alright.
The chief astrophysicist asked as they came on screen. "As well as can be expected, Professor. I take it you haven't heard about the incident yet?" I asked. Her face told me all I needed to know, which worried me even more. Had I stepped out of line, telling her classified information?
Adele, it's the middle of our cycle up here. I figured that your call was an emergency, but no one has told me anything, except you right now.
She told me. I'm not sure how much I can say, except that one of the capsules that the Diakali-2 sent crashed near the South Atlantic this evening. I told her.
That sounds like good news. We haven't been able to get any readings from the drone ship for almost 5 days now. We were planning on reporting this tomorrow,
she said. I felt a growing unease in the pit of my stomach. I hope it is something worthwhile. Dr. White, CSO Dyer, 2nd CSO Eisenhardt and myself will begin the next phase of terrestrial experiments within the day, I told her. She nodded, seemingly struggling to stay awake.
Keep me informed,
she said. I will, I promised, realizing this was probably an excuse to get rest. I closed the channel and sat back, pondering over whether to go to the biome early or sit it out. I knew impatience would foster only more problems. So, I closed down all devices and got some sleep. The last good night's rest I would ever have. November 4th, 0900 hours. It would benefit anyone listening to this log to understand something about our mission, as classified as it is, to understand our plight. Given what is happening right now, it really doesn't bother me if I lose my job. My life always comes first. And if I am to die, I think people have a right to know. It will likely be months before anyone listens to this. I've saved everything in a cloud document to be released anonymously online. So whatever the results, I want others to be aware of this catastrophe. I joined the team as a result of my grades under the late Professor Karl, the man that rekindled my love for space. As a child, I've always dreamt of traveling the stars. But it seems so far off. Attending and listening to the professor's lecture at the university were like a breath of fresh air. Suddenly, with people like Elon Musk entering the scene, space travel was becoming relevant again. One day out of the blue, shortly before he committed suicide, my mentor asked to see me. I remember every detail of the conversation, for it was our very last. Adele, I've trained you so much for life beyond this world, but I fear that it is still hardly the beginning of your education, my dear, he told me with a weary sigh. I still have 3 years left to graduate, sir. I can learn a great deal more, I told him with a laugh. This is not a time for jokes, my dear. I'm telling you that everything you have learned is about to change, he said harshly. I stifled back a laugh and stood up straight, listening as he explained. There is a program that I enrolled you in last semester, doing great work to understand the workings of Mars. Yesterday, the chief research officer contacted me to look at your credentials. Adele, do you know what that means? I was at a loss for words. I had heard rumors of studies going on the Red Planet, but most of that was funded by NASA. I wasn't aware of any private research. But my only question was, what are they trying to find? Hopefully, the key to our future on this planet, Karl told me. I was only given 3 days to pack and told to keep my new assignment a secret from everyone, even family. Part of me was anxious, another part frightened. There was a lot going on that I didn't fully understand, and it felt like my mentor had tossed me into the deep end with sharks. His sudden death shook me even harder, making me wonder if he had taken his own life as a result of something connected to this project. Some of the research that the university did wasn't exactly considered legal, and when I arrived at the underground habitation, I could tell that the work here was meant to fall into that category. The CRO, Baker, gave me a brief rundown of the job when I arrived. You were chosen because of your expertise in atmospheric research. This is a vital operation for our attempt at terraforming the Red Planet. But what we do here is not something that will be heard about on nightly news or even tabloids. Everyone here has to sign a non-disclosure agreement during their stay. And even though Professor Karl has vouched for you several times, I'm afraid we can't make any exceptions. I understand. Good. It's easier if you fall in line with what we're doing here. The main reason this facility is so guarded is because we don't wish to be bogged down by politics or useless regulations that could stalemate progress. Everyone here works together on the same projects. That being said, Understand that we are largely on our own here. If things go wrong or there is an accident, no one will be coming to our rescue. Do you believe that you can handle that risk?" I told him I could, without hesitation. I didn't believe there was anything about our work that could be life-threatening. But then, I saw the crash site, and seeds of doubt began to plant themselves in my brain. Anna was also worried. She had family that had died during a mishap on the lunar colony a year ago, and just being near extraterrestrial material had her on high alert. "Let's get this done so we can move on," I told her, as we both donned protective suits again. The hive itself is built with 3 separate rings, the one in the middle being the main habitat where we perform the majority of our work. To get there, you must move through a pressurized chamber. There are 4 of them that are part of the middle ring relay system, and that is where Anna and I stand now. The idea is to keep all external atmosphere and bacteria away from the main habitat, hence why we have to strip down and then reclothe before being allowed in. It's a monotonous process, but it's also one you get used to over time. Inside the habitat, you could easily believe that you're actually stepping onto Mars itself. The temperature averages 50 degrees below zero on a normal day, powered by a unique system of coolant and solar energy that also keeps the lighting the exact way it would be on Mars. If it weren't for our suits, I know Anna and I would be dead. But this is just routine compared to what we are trying to uncover today. The sample from the capsule, brought back to be seen amid the rich soil that we have cultivated here for the past 6 months. Anna and I opened the compartments and released the fresh new samples, mixing them with the dirt and clay on the surface of the habitat. It looks very different from the samples we are accustomed to. It feels different as well, more like a thick liquid material. It certainly reminded me of the type of molten goop one might find from a lava flow.
Initial analysis shows heavy components of volcanic material. Where did the Ackley crew say this was found?
Anna asked. I was staring at the glassy material, marveling at how it seemed to consume everything in its path.
They haven't confirmed just yet, but it likely came from the secondary rover near Arcia Mons. We've been attempting to enter some of the underground caverns near to Olympus for a while and proved unsuccessful. Arcia was the next candidate. That's strange. It seemed to be radiating heat a moment ago.
I commented, checking my scans again. There had never been any signs of possible volcanic activity on the Red Planet for the past few centuries. Except for ancient samples from when the planet first formed, we had never encountered anything like this at all. But the readings we were getting now seemed fresh, new. It was exciting to behold for a moment as we began to test the next sample, determining how the glassy substance interacted with the regular Martian soil. But that excitement soon shifted to nightmarish as we returned to continue the study the following day. The first red flag was when CRO Baker told us they could not get a proper reading on anything within the habitat. A glitch? I asked. Eisenhart and Dyer were inside the habitat, and according to Baker, hadn't heard from them for about an hour. This raised security level automatically to stage orange. Anna and I agreed to suit up immediately and see what was going on. November 5th, 1000 hours. Entering the habitat, it was easy to determine what was wrong. The sensors had made no lie. A tree had sprouted near to where we had been taking samples the day before. Getting closer told us what happened to our colleagues. Both Dyer and Eisenhart were now lying on the ground, covered in what looked like thin layers of spider silk. I felt my blood run cold as I wondered how it was possible for this to have happened so quickly.
I'm not getting any kind of reading on the tree,
Anna told me. I didn't want to even dare to get close to it. The thing was abnormal in every sense of the word. It had literally grown overnight.
Send those scans to Baker.
I ordered as I tried to get a hold of myself. I thought back to the circumstances surrounding the crash. A sense of foreboding had been following me ever since. This was a bad omen from the start, I thought, as Anna went to the nearby terminal and I tried to check for vitals on her 2 co-workers. Much to my surprise, they were still radiating body heat. The tree I suspected was now keeping them alive.
Just what are you?
I whispered to the multicolored creation as I reached out toward it. My hand felt like it was on fire. I jerked back in pain and felt another dreadful aura begin to fall over me. This was beyond anything we had ever encountered. Then I turned to Anna and saw she too seemed frightened.
Baker has sent back new instructions,
she said, her voice shaking.
What is it? What do we do?
I asked. She looked like she was about to cry. And a moment later, my heart sunk in terror as I found out why.
He says we are not to leave the facility until we can determine the cause of this abnormality. Adele, we're trapped here.
I have seen death before, but not like this. Death is a natural part of our cycle. As a scientist, I understand that some things in our environment are designed to be there as buffers. Certain species often counteract others to provide balance. The tree that is growing here in our underground facility is not like that. It comes from another world, an ancient and dead world that has not had life for perhaps a few million years. The fact that its presence here is allowing it to rejuvenate should be something that me and my colleagues can celebrate. But that isn't what is happening. 2 of my co-workers are comatose, trapped in some kind of strange substance that exudes from the alien tree, and then Anna and I are prisoners. Our CRO, Paul Baker, and the others in charge of the hive have decided we can't leave the facility until we determine what has caused this sudden transformation. Whatever the tree is, it's a danger, and now we are being forced to be close to it, to study it and determine if there is a way to fix what has happened. Anna, my only colleague that is still awake besides myself, is doing her best to remain calm as I struggle to document the experience. I felt that despite the danger we are facing, a record had to be kept. The world needed to know that this sort of evil existed.
Both Subject 1 and Subject 2 appear stable. Healthy, in fact, according to my initial blood samples,
she said to Baker as we gave her report at 1800 hours. The twilight cycle of the habitat was the hardest to endure, and often researchers were told never to be inside during the dropping temperatures. On the red planet, an average night can drop to well below 50 degrees zero. To mimic those conditions, our facility pumps in continuous cold oxygen to keep the environment as close to Mars as possible. But to have us inside the habitat when that happened was not heard of. Our suits are designed to withstand the blistering cold for perhaps a few hours at best. This was going to be an all-night event.
Do another test in the morning, then see if perhaps you can move them away from the tree. Have you managed to get any reading on it yet?
Baker asked.
Nothing, sir. Every scan we make shows just an empty void. Despite the fact that the tree is clearly flourishing, it's not composed of any living matter. For that reason, I'm calling it a corpse tree for now,
Anna said. Baker gave us instructions about a supply drop that was authorized to provide us essential supplies during the night. I was to focus on our mysterious plant to remember the details. It seemed to have grown by at least another meter just in the short span that we were here.
Can you run a check of the atmospheric levels in the habitat over the past 3 hours?
I asked Baker.
What are we looking for? You know the system is still on the fritz on our end. It might be a bit jumbled,
he admitted.
Anything out of the ordinary. I want to see what sort of materials this corpse tree is producing, if any.
I told him. He closed the channel with the promise he would investigate as Anna and I moved to the south side of the habitat, away from the tree, and waited for the supply drop.
Everything will be fine,
she reassured me. I could hear a tremor in her voice. I knew she was as scared as I was, but trying very hard to hide it. I only smiled back at her, and we found shelter in one of the erosive caves as we waited. Sleep would likely be impossible, given the drop in temperature very soon. The cold night would wrap us and pierce our fiery souls. It was a frightening thought to think of. I decided instead to focus on our 2 co-workers.
Do you think they'll be alright? From what I can tell, they are exhibiting the same type of response the body would have if it was entering into surgery. The tree seems to have paralyzed them, kept them asleep and alive. But I can't determine if it is harming them or not,
she said.
I don't need a scientific analysis right now, Anna. I want to hear what your gut has to say,
I told her. She sighed, trying her hardest not to crack under the enormous pressure we were facing.
I think they may already be dead, to be honest, despite what the scans are showing us. Whatever is out there is not Eisenhart or Dyer.
I didn't know how to respond to that, so I crept closer to her and hoped that with our bodies together, even in the suits, we could stay warm as the temperature started to drop. Endurance through the night, and the faint hope that we could survive this, were all we had. November 5th, 2100 hours. I kept a note of the time for when the supplies came, using the opportunity to attempt to communicate once again with the Akali 2. I needed to know more about where they had uncovered this cosmic force, to shed a light on what we could do to combat it. But sadly, I was unable to get any response at this hour. Perhaps because the tree was continuing to distort the signal. Or, I considered, something unnatural had happened on the satellite station. It was another frightening concept to imagine my crewmates up there in space dealing with a similar situation. Had the same cosmic creation disrupted their research? Taken their lives? I knew only time would give me the answers. So, I resolved to stay alive long enough to find out. 2300 hours. It feels impossible to even consider rest when less than a few meters from where we hide, Dyer and Eisenhart are suffering and being tortured by a force we hardly understand. But somehow, Anna is able to find rest. The cave has provided some shelter from the deadly cold, and the heat within our suits as well. Every time I move though, I feel as though the protective gear will crystallize from the weather just beyond our tiny hiding place. And the supplies which we were given I know are not practical. Small IV bags of a liquid diet, an additional catheter bag, and then more tools to begin dissecting the tree. Just the thought of having to eat to survive here in this place for longer than a day is impossible to fathom. It has made me reconsider the options our species have to even reach Mars at all. Everything about this environment is hostile toward our species. As I struggle to rest, the next unprecedented moment happens. A pulsing light shimmers from the core of the tree. I gently nudged Anna to try and wake her up, but she was as stiff as a board. Instead, I crawled out of her cave and watched as the tree seemed to come to life with color and light. It was radiating energy, making it brighter than a star in the sky and forcing me to look away. I could see something else happening though. Eisenhart and Dyer were rising from the ground, as though being pushed up the way a tree would push roots into the heavens. I tried to call out to them, but the silky material that had covered their body was now encasing them both completely in a cocoon. Were they still trapped inside, being sapped of their energy by the tree? I pushed a little further, feeling the gravity around me get heavier as I tried to see if I could reach Dyer. If I could reach them, maybe there was still a chance to save them, I thought as I struggled to put one foot in front of the other. The pulsing became louder as I stood there, trying to reach the cocoon. Then, a loud noise rang out from Dyer. Like a scream so ungodly that I was sure he was being killed over and over and over again. Surges of energy pushed through the roots of the tree, shooting up into his body as I saw the silk begin to fade away. It was heating up and burning away his tomb, I realized as I saw his pained face. His mouth and eyes covered in roots as he struggled to move, and the energy continuously shooting more raging power into his body. Finally, this insanity came to an end, to a maddening crescendo, as his whole body seemed to shimmer and shake. Then, Dyer exploded all around me, his intestines and organs flailing out like a bomb went off as his blood and other bodily fluids covered my protective gear. It hit the suit like acid, burning away at the gear as I felt the deadly cold touch my skin. My body did not have the time to react as I felt shock hit my arm, a small part of my lower wrist crystallizing from the intense temperature. I stumbled backward, hardly able to compose myself as I flailed my arms and screamed to Anna for help. Somehow, my cries woke her from her intense sleep. She ran toward me, pulling me into the enclosure, rapidly getting the supplies needed to protect my suit before more damage was done. But was it already too late? I could feel my heart beating rapidly as I looked toward the debris from Dyer's body. The tree had used him to its full extent, and then discarded him as refuse. I am quite sure the longer we stay here, it will do the same to us. Less than 10 hours have passed since Anna and I have been forced to be trapped inside the same habitat we have worked in for 2 years. Before this day, I thought I understood how the universe works. Perhaps that was haughty of me as a scientist, but I have always thought there is a natural order to everything that happens in our world. Our work to change the surface of Mars wasn't supposed to be different. But now, I stare in the face of something I can't comprehend. It resembles a tree, but that is truthfully a poor description. Since I had time to recover and rest, I will do my best to explain what it is in this current lock. I have no idea if we are going to get out of here, or if we are even going to make it to tomorrow, given how powerful and strange this new entity we discovered is, which is why I must document everything as quickly and reasonably as possible, if I can. I suspect that the mysterious tree is also having an effect on our mental health, given how both Anna and I have been reacting over the past hour. Each moment we are trapped here, it gains strength. From the air, from the ground, everything around it, pulling off its energy, both seen and unseen. It wants to consume it all. But I need to understand why this is happening, to make sense of all of this. So I will continue to log, and hope that the science I've trusted for so long won't fail me now. November 6th, 0500 hours. We keep losing communication with Baker and anyone beyond the habitat. I believe this means that the tree has extended its roots to control part of the environment. The temperature is changing slowly as well. I had thought the tree might be adjusting everything to suit it better, but it is difficult to be certain. The pulses of energy I observed from the night before have not returned, for example. But I know that this strange life form is observing us, the same way that we are doing to it. I feel as though after what happened with Dyer, it has gone into stasis for a while. It is full from whatever it did to cause the body to explode. It still causes me to shudder to think of how quickly one of my colleagues died, but I know that more death will follow if Anna and I cannot understand this powerful force. Our first task is to take samples of what is left of Dyer's body, scattered across the habitat like rain. Baker theorized that perhaps remnants of the tree might still be within his bodily fluids. And since we couldn't get close enough to research it firsthand, this would be the next best thing. I can't properly describe how awful and gut-wrenching it felt to use the same equipment for collecting his remains as I had less than a week ago for normal research. It was terrifying to imagine the next thing that might be scraped off the surface of the ground was our own body.
How are you holding up?
I asked Anna after we had collected a good portion of the remains into a container. I didn't look at it. I couldn't. Here was a friend and a colleague turned into nothing but a puddle of goo. Frightening, couldn't even begin to describe it. And I was somewhat relieved to hear Anna echo my concerns as she said,
I wonder how much pain he experienced there near the end. It must have been the worst thing in his entire life.
Anna began the initial tests, taking samples and placing them in tubes. Our resources were only going to last a short period of time under these conditions. And Baker made it crystal clear he wasn't about to shut down the project simply because our lives were in danger. Of course I was angry about it, but another part of me understood. This was life-changing, species-changing. We needed to know what we were up against. Anna and I might not make it out of here. It was terrifying to consider that all our efforts were only going to be a blip in the research papers. But for those beyond these walls, it didn't matter. We were beyond help as far as they were concerned. An audible gasp from Anna brought my thoughts back to the tests. She was showing me the readings, but even when I saw them, I still felt compelled to ask.
Oh, are you sure that's right? Maybe the equipment is malfunctioning,
I said. The doctor shook her head and replied,
I double-checked. This is accurate. Somehow, there are still signs of life amid this goop. Parts of Dyer, they are still functioning. His cells are replicating within this thing. I don't understand it.
I forced myself to look down at the primordial mess. It seemed to be swirling, moving about the way a fish might under mud. Could it be that our friend and colleague was still alive, despite his body being gone? We checked the surrounding area where his bodily debris had fallen next, discovering more heat signatures and new growth. There were saplings sprouting from the ground. But these were not like the first tree at all. No, these strange branching plants were made out of skin and bone, muscle and tissue. Anna made a dark hypothesis as we observed the horror before us.
He'd used Dyer as a means to pollinate, transforming his body from his normal molecular structure into something that could spread and evolve. It's reproducing,
she realized. November 6th, 1300 hours. We have been advised by Baker to keep our distance from the new growth. There are approximately 13 seeds in all, each seemingly growing from a different organ of Dyer's that spread across the habitat. I have been focusing on Eisenhardt's cocoon, which has shown no signs of movement. It has occurred to me that if the tree is currently resting, I might have a chance to free him from his silk prison. As Anna focuses herself on the strange deadly plants, I begin to cut apart the thick material encasing Eisenhardt. At first I believe that I'm going to be succeeding. But then I detect a reaction from the central tree. Strange snake-like roots swivel toward me, covering up my colleague back up again every time I cut. The tree is defending itself. I can only think of one solution to prevent Eisenhardt from becoming a host to another pollination attempt by this monster. Heading over to the terminal, I put in a supply request.
This seems unorthodox, Adele. What are you planning?
Baker asked.
Please understand that Eisenhardt is dead. He died days ago, but we need to prevent this thing from spreading, Paul. It isn't safe. Can't you see by merely monitoring it, we are risking everyone's life?
I asked.
Our system has never detected any threat to Eisenhardt's body. Anna confirmed that. He is healthy and in no pain. You're suggesting killing him. If we don't, he will just be consumed like Dyer was.
I argued.
How can we be sure that Dyer is truly gone?
Baker asked. I realized I was talking in circles to him. Business would always come before people's lives.
You know, you really should have been a politician.
I told him bitterly as I closed the channel.
You can't blame him for how he feels.
I turned to argue with my former lover, and instead found a scream emerging from my lips. Anna had changed. Growths had covered her suit like barnacles, resembling a strange ring-like fungus mixed with vines.
Anna, what happened?
I said as I tried to reach out to her. She took a step back. her eyes glassy with a far-off look.
It was inevitable that this outcome occur. Your species is notorious for stretching the limits of its knowledge beyond what they should allow.
Anna told me, but her voice didn't sound like her own. It gave me a cold chill down my spine as I realized that the creature was channeling its thoughts into my friend. She was becoming a puppet too.
What are you?
I asked.
Everything. Existence, from within and without. We are death, come to this world and beyond. The eternal. And we have you to thank for that.
It responded.
We only want to understand. Humans want to coexist with all species.
I told it.
You lie to yourself when you say that. Consuming diet allowed us to understand emotion. He was not thinking of empathy, but only his anger, fear, and rage dominating him. He wanted to destroy us. And you also, Dr. Borzai. You have only shown us fear and hostility. Our ways are only to benefit. We consume to prevent destruction. How can you not understand?
Anna reached up with her left hand, and I saw she was preparing to undo her helmet.
Don't! You will kill her!
I screamed.
Have we not proven that death is meaningless to us? We have evolved beyond it. There is no life or death where we exist. Only us. We are existence. It will be the same with you. We are offering a new start for your species.
The controlling tree pulled her helmet off, and I screamed again as the deadly temperature hit my friend. Anna's body began to crystallize in mere seconds, cascading like glass down into her suit as I tried to rush and save her. Instead, I found myself falling into a massive slush of goop. Her entire body and suit was now melting inward, cascading on top of me as more of the strange writhing tentacles attacked me. I screamed at the top of my lungs and crawled away, hearing a strong whoosh from above. A miracle. Baker had chosen to allow oxygen to enter the habitat. The creature was stunned momentarily as I escaped, rushing to the nearest enclosure as its strange substance fell from my own suit. Then, I looked toward the garden of corpses and saw all 3 of my colleagues now were completely transformed into over 3,000 small branching trees, all preparing to spread toward me. November 7th, 06:30 hours. All communications have failed us. What little messages we could get out of the facility are now cut off thanks to the tree. I'm sorry. I say we, as if I'm not alone here. I know Anna is gone now, a part of this cosmic horror, but I still struggle to come to terms with it. I know I will die here soon, but I won't go without a fight. I have decided to use the last portion of my supplies to construct a small thermal bomb and destroy the tree and its corpse-like sprouts. The oxygen which flooded the facility less than 10 hours ago. I know this was a delaying tactic by Baker and the others in charge. The only reason I'm alive is to finish their research. But I can't be the test subject anymore. I don't want to wind up like Eisenhardt, Dyer, or Anna. Within 2 hours, I finished the first thermal bomb and decided it's time to test it. I moved from my enclosure towards the strange and cosmic garden. The corpses haven't moved much since our last encounter when the strange growth failed to swallow me whole. But I know that they don't want to make that same mistake again. Eisenhardt's cocoon is the closest, his body the only one untouched by the alien force so far. I use the simple tools I have to pierce the side of the silky flesh that encases him and place the detonating device next to his body as the tree's roots scramble to cover it up. You seek to kill us. Strange and almost ethereal voices called out from the ground. I froze as I looked at the sprouts. Each of them grown from the remnants of my friends. Bone and flesh had mixed together to form organs like mouths, eyes, and ears. The tree was evolving and transforming its sapling into plant people. I thought as I looked down at one of the hypnotic eyes. "Why do you refuse to join our evolution, Adele?" It was now using Dyer's voice as I stepped away, the detonator in my hand.
You talk as though you are advancing our species, but it's a lie. All I have seen over these past few days is death and destruction. You have taken the souls of my colleagues and turned them into your mindless drones.
I screamed as I pressed the button. Behind me, I heard the silky material begin to whine and blow up like a balloon as the roots struggled to control the explosion of fire that I had caused. Finally, it spilled out beyond Eisenhardt's body, and the goop I had seen Anna transform into came slushing out, ready to attack me. Instinct kicked in as I ran from the husk, moving to a higher elevation as I grabbed the other few tools I had left to attempt to fight back. This was just the beginning of my assault on the cosmic being, but it was clearly changing its view of me as just a nuisance. Thanks to destroying the seedlings within Eisenhardt's body, I was now considered a threat. "We have told you already that death is beyond what we are capable of. You seek to destroy that which exists outside your known understanding. This is not how your colleagues would have wanted it. Is it not human nature to grow, learn, to advance yourself? We are the epitome of knowledge. Of all." The mouths that were growing amid the garden all spoke at once. Cascading chaos was spilling out of them as they grew together toward my location, and I ran to the main generator. I needed them close enough to be sure what I did made an impact.
You can use our language to spit out all that pithy shit all day for all I care. It's just a bunch of lies. You're a virus, an invader. And if there is one thing you might not understand about our species yet, it's that we are fighters.
I screamed. I used the wrench and started to bang at the control panel, the life force of the entire habitat. If I was successful, I knew this might cause more problems for me than solutions. But I wasn't here to try to save myself anymore. This was beyond that. The strange writhing monster that now was using the entire earth beneath its roots to move toward me, stretching its tentacles out as Anna, Eisenhardt, and dire skull-like faces screamed toward me, was to be destroyed whether I lived or not. The mistake, I realized at long last, was trying to revive it from its slumber. Maybe it was immortal. But then again, it's been dead before. I wonder if maybe centuries ago, some other species found it on Mars and destroyed it. Or maybe the desolation of the red planet is a direct result of this monster. Everything in the habitat reeks of death now, because of it consuming everything. It's an inevitable outcome for such a virus. Its only purpose seems to be spreading and consuming more, making everything turn into an aberration of itself. It's nearly on top of me now. This is my final lock. I am screaming in defiance of my colleagues, against the research I was instructed to do, and against what some might consider a god. I must fight this fate. Kill the unkillable. The creature is here. I have no choice but to go now. I pray this lock is my last. I pray I'm not gonna be part of this monster soon. Goodbye. November 10th, 1400 hours. Log of Adele Borzai uploaded to a cloud server. Commentary below of the situation extrapolated on by CRO Paul Baker. Seeing Adele take her own life was nightmarish to behold. Our services were unable to stop the destruction of the hive, of the alien force, or of Dr. Borzai. Her efforts to cause the entire facility to collapse were indeed successful. All of our years of research and funding were lost in an instant. When I discovered these logs and read all the things that Adele and the others experienced, I debated what to do with it for quite some time. Then, today, the choice was taken from me. Dr. Taggart arrived at 0100 hours this morning to retrieve what was left of the Mars habitat. She has explained to me that it is imperative our research on a newly discovered cosmic being continue elsewhere. So then, this will be something that the Janus Project will spearhead for the foreseeable future? I asked her. I make a mental note that I must research the group further, for their clandestine tactics have always troubled me. I will run it by the commander, but as far as I'm concerned, we have no other choice. You recall the incident on the moon, as well as the other phenomena we have encountered lately. Our time is running out, and the confirmation from Ackley too confirms that the being is not from Mars at all. It seems our fears of shadows from the true world entering this dimension were justified, Paul. She told me. I could hear the fear in her voice, which has made me also equally frightened. I chose to hid the Dell's locks from her, and will instead send all of them to the cloud. If Dr. Borzai was able to properly make use of the service, they will be released into the network 4 months from now. I have no idea what will occur after that, but I suspect we will be at war with these things. Maybe by then, new hope will sprout. It's all we have left.